Thank you so much for staying tuned. Channel. Welcome to yet another edition of a wonderful program. Yes, good governance and what it takes to really make our economy, our politics, what it really takes to make a human right to be a thing that we look up to. And of course, it's a program by and made, sponsored by the European Union, making us to see the impact and effect of good governance. Today on the platform, we're taking a look at, yes, the fight against crime. We want to, arrest an individual and all that. Talking about the impact of the political elite. It's about law enforcement. It's all about those people that you send to go carry out one or two things to make sure that the law and order is upheld. But when you have other forces stronger than the institution, what do you think one can do to really wriggle out of that shackle where the law is meant for a certain person and of course not for other classes of personalities vis-a-vis the political elite? Get to hear Jordan did giving, but it's applicable to the common on the street. When you're a political elite, they be like they're somehow above the law because just one core, even the judgment and everything falls in their favor. So how can we really make sure that the law is above everyone and not below some certain group of persons? With me here in the studio to talk about this, he is Executive Director of AMEJ. I like to call him a comrade David Ogolo. It's a pleasure to have you on this platform, comrade.
Thank you very much, Bisi.
All right. Well, the other time you get to hear about some persons being so invasive when it comes to law and order. It's like the law is scared of some persons vis-a-vis political elite, or in quote, who they call who owns the land. Is that supposed to be the situation?
Thank you very much. I think we're very happy that we're focusing on this issue of law enforcement and the political elites and the threat to civil society and how that again undermines governance and in the long run undermine the economic growth that would help address the question of poverty and even if we are to achieve prosperity in the state and in the country in entirety. So the role of the elite is very fundamental because you can't take from the elite. The political dynamism is that if the environment is very unfriendly, if we don't have the political will for the leadership to ensure that there are institutions that make it impossible for law enforcement to take law into their hands and create a culture of impunity, then it's difficult for liberty, freedom, which is the cornerstone of democratic society, to ever happen.
And the sacrifice that civil society and human rights defenders play in this society is not really recognized. You know, any society that wants to grow, you don't play with the institutions. You don't play with the right of citizens. You don't play with the access to freedom. Without those things, the society cannot grow. And once the liberty is taken away from the citizen, it's difficult for you to have the freedom to express yourself, the freedom to associate, the freedom to protest, and the freedom for speech making. You know, once you take that away from human being, I don't think you are able to survive. And so that's why what has happened in the recent times, particularly in Edo State, is troubling and is setting a very dangerous trajectory. But I'm happy that at least the judiciary is stepping up to addressing some of these issues, particularly the last arrest of Comrade Kola, and then the recent one is the arrest of Mobude. This is not very good for the society when you begin to go after human rights defenders. It sends a very wrong signal. And because these guys are not carrying gun, they are only asking for the fundamental human right of the citizens. and the only demanding for their right to be able to associate, to protest. And these are the variables that make a society to run very well. And once you take that away, it becomes difficult for society to survive. And that's why I think that the law enforcement agency should again go back and reconsider this new dimension that is happening. It's not very good for the society. Citizens have responsibility to demand that a society should be run in a way that everybody is safe. And that's why some of us have also found it very attractive to support the governor for recent actions, which again demonstrate political will to send a very strong message to end this kidnapping culture that is gradually enveloping the entire state, which you all know that both the short-term and long-term impact will damage any development we have achieved in Edo State. And so any reasonable human being would definitely rise up to support the governor, particularly sending a very strong signal that the culture of impunity is unacceptable. But law enforcement agency shouldn't take that advantage not to comply with due process and to be transparent. And you don't commercialize that space while you try to carry out the enforcement of those laws that's coming out from the state to address some of these issues. And I think this is where I think the police, the SSS, and the law enforcement agency need to rise up to the challenge. We do also understand their challenges. Their challenges, because some of these actors that are involved in this kidnapping trade, they are not from the sky. They are also part of the system. And unfortunately, you can't, and the law enforcement agency also face huge challenge.
So are you not saying that the law enforcement agencies, their hands are tied when you talk about law enforcement when it comes to political elites?
Yes, sometimes, yes, I can agree with you. Some of these guys who have access to these gun, violent weapons, they were used by the political elite during election. And then after the election, they leave it with them. And this is the weapon they use in carrying out this terrorism. And sometimes when they are arrested, they bring their political mind to pressure this law enforcement agency to release them. So we also realize, and as civil society, we also understand that the law enforcement agency, they are faced with this challenge, there's no doubt. And the law enforcement agency are also working within a tight financial constraint. Because another thing you have to look is that how resourceful is the law enforcement agency? Do the government provide them the resources? Well, they are human beings. They have children. They have family. They have blood that flow in them. So we also realize that. But I think they should not, on the basis of their frustration, undermine the fundamental values that in the long run protects that institution, the law enforcement. So human rights defenders are not to be sacrificed because of these challenges that law enforcement agency faced in Edo State. We can work together. We can work, we can build a partnership that will address this challenge that we are facing in Edo State today.
Now, how do you think this partnership can be forged, knowing fully well that if you take a look at an upright activist, it's like their own mode of operation differs or not in tandem with the political elites? How's it going to work?
Well, we can be a source of whistleblowing. For example, just last week here, we went to Delta State. We were able to blow the whistle on the police officer that collected 500,000 as
500,000?
Yes, for bail, and for innocent souls who were kept in the prison. And the police commissioner in Delta State reasonably recognized the issues we were putting on the table, and with evidence that a senior police officer in Ogara collected 500,000 naira.
That's serious.
And we provided the evidence. And the police commissioner in Delta State took an action. The two young men that were arrested, who were innocent, were released on bail for us. And they were granted to us. I signed the bail. That's mutual respect. And we commend the Delta State Commissioner for Police. And we were able to also reach amicable understanding on how we can work together to continue to strengthen support for law enforcement agencies like the police. But when the law enforcement agency like the police is creating an environment that is harsh for the human rights defender, it sends a wrong signal, particularly the issue of bail is free. But the truth is that, is bail really free? For example, in Edo State, the commissioner for police cannot claim ignorance. And right away in the police headquarters, he doesn't know what is happening. He can't claim ignorance. The bail is free. It's just in word, it's in theory.
But he came out to say that bail is free.
That's what he will say. And I understand the challenge. And I'm happy that he also reached out to say that, please, help me out. When you see any police officer collecting money for bail, blow the whistle on him. But you have to put the machinery in place. You have to put institutions in place. It's not as easy. It's easy said than done.
Once upon a time, a great leader once said, Africa is a great nation, and a great continent. Nigeria is a great nation. Talk about the components, but the issue that we have is that some individuals are stronger, far stronger than the institution. Would you say that is the case we are facing right now as human rights activists?
Yes, I will agree that because and that is a threat to liberty. When the state is stronger than the people and is used mischievously, particularly the political elite, and then the law enforcement agency don't work in a way that protect the liberty or protect the right of the people, that becomes very dangerous. And then we'll be sliding to authoritarianism, you know, a kind of, because the opposite of a narrow corridor to liberty is the road to ruin. And that's very dangerous for the society. A society where the law enforcement agencies are not complying to due process, they're not complying to the rule of law, then you are certainly raising a very dangerous dimension of the democratic process. And that's why we are appealing to the law enforcement agency. They have responsibility, and I'm happy that the political leadership are beginning to send out this signal that they have to follow the rule of law in their action. And I'm happy, I'm encouraged that this kind of political messaging from the leadership of the law enforcement agency, like the Commissioner of Police in Edo State, the head of DSS, the head of other law enforcement agency, is very important. And human rights defenders have responsibility to continue to amplify the voice of the voiceless. Because once the institution is too strong, and like we have had it in the country today, once the political elite continue to use the law enforcement agency, it becomes difficult for you to express yourself. It becomes difficult for citizens to participate in things that will strengthen governance. And once governance is threatened, and you don't have the opportunity for people to be able to participate actively in governance, then you cannot talk about development. You can't achieve sustainable development. And that's where we are today. And I'm happy each time I hear the governor saying, once you allow what is going on in the state, kidnapping, violence, all kind of violence, you will not talk about attracting investors into the state. Because and once investors don't come to Edo State, you cannot blame the governor. There's no way he will be able to use the monthly allocation that come to Edo State to jumpstart the economy of Edo State. You need all kind of revenue source to come into Edo State to survive the state. Otherwise, unemployment will continue to rise. And once the youth don't have job, they are bound to survive. And they go into crime. And so there is a close correlation of unemployment level that is rising in the Edo State and the number of Yahoo boys you found in EFCC net and the court action, because they are all connected. Since the government have embarked on massive awareness raising on the need to end the kidnapping culture in Edo State, you can see that at least some level of confidence is beginning to grow. Some people will say that some business are running away from Edo State. It's only dirty business that will run. So let's give the governor all the encouragement. Let's support the governor in what he's doing. And we have also underlined this fact that it has to be premised under the rule of law.
Rule of law. All right, now talking about the rule of law, let's take a look at the human rights activists or, activism in Edo State. How can you, as an organization vis-a-vis an edge, play that particular role of creating this balance between law enforcers and, of course, right activists so that you both can work in synergy to really stop all this kind of operation right now? We talked about the arrest of our caller and, of course, the latest of Mobile. How can this be checked?
Well, I think one of the things is that we also need to set boundaries in our actions. It's very important. We have to set boundaries. Somehow, the civil society is a very loose body. And so, on our own, we have to self-regulate ourselves. Because in as much as we point fingers, we have to also point finger to ourselves. We have to take responsibility. They say who much is given, much is expected from. So we have responsibility to also ensure that we build a space that also we hold ourselves accountable, and then also find a way to build a dialogue. Because that's how society grows, that's how democracy grows. Because we need the law enforcement agency. We have to be very careful. It's not all the entire police officer that is bad.
True. True to that.
It's not the entire police officer. They are good police officers. They are good, credible police officers that are actually doing their best. But it's just some few disgruntled ones that have the criminal mindset. So you cannot generalize using these few criminal ones to generalize and rubbish and label the entire police institution as bad. So on the basis of that, we have responsibility as human rights defender to isolate these ones out and beginning to incentivize those ones that are doing the work properly, so that those ones can also be encouraged. But if you use one brush to label them as bad, it doesn't create the incentive for them to be encouraged. And so one of the things we have taken up in ANED is beginning to create an awareness that we shouldn't use one brush to paint the entire law enforcement agency as bad. We have a responsibility to ensure that the law enforcement, as they carry out their actions, it has to be carried out under the roof of rule of law, due process, transparency, and we have picked on the issue of bail is free campaign. And that campaign we have launched, we have gone to Asaba to launch it, and we have seen the dividend in Asaba. A senior police officer caught collecting 500,000 naira for bribe. That money was returned back to the owner, and the innocent young men that were arrested and detained were released without any bail paid. That is excellent success story.
So can I think that's right now in Edo State?
We can replicate that in Edo State. And I'm very convinced that the Edo State Commissioner for Police is willing to follow that footstep and seem to be seen in that light. And I'm also encouraged by the fact that the governor is also not only carrying out his anti-kidnapping war in a way that he will not recognize that he has to do it under the rule of law. So that because even investors that are coming, they want to be seen, they want to see that the rule of law is operating here. Because when government takes decision without following the rule of law, no investors will come to such an environment. And then no investors will come to Edo State if human rights defenders are kept in the cell when they speak out. I can assure you, no investor, no one person will take his capital from anywhere around the world and say, I'm coming to Edo State where human rights are not free. So the arrest of Kola, the arrest of Omobode is a big threat in doing risk analysis for Edo State. And the implication is huge. And I will appeal to the Edo State governor as a matter of urgency, because this is not good. The implication, the damage it causes the state is huge. It's just unfortunately that our political elite don't take this into consideration in the analysis. And I'm sure that if the governor has somebody who does analysis, risk analysis, for him, he should have known by now that the arrest of these two key human rights defenders is a minus for the state image. Just saying the arrest of these two prominent human rights activists is damaging for the state. And I wonder how you could now send a message to investors to come to such an environment. So the law enforcement agency should also help Edo State government so that they can deliver on their promises to the citizens. Because if investors don't come, if the economy is not growing, there's no way Governor Okpebholo will be able to deliver. And if Okpebholo is not able to deliver on his commitment to provide job for the youth, attract investors to come to the state, I don't think it's good for anybody.
All right. So before calling it a wrap on this show, what advice do you have for political elite that are in one way or the other influencing the actions or inactions of the law enforcers?
You see, ironically, the political elites are not also in peace. You know, ironically, no matter how they found it, if Edo State is not properly run, and we don't allow the rule of law to take place, and you want to, it will not help the elite. Even though they live on rent. You know, one of the key problems and the challenge we have in this country is that most of the political elite live on rent. They don't have second address. So sometimes this whole crisis is their source of income. So anytime there is peace, they don't find it comfortable. So I'm very encouraged that the governor should recognize that and try to make sure that this whole crisis architecture is completely wiped out. And allow credible people who have something to offer. And I've always told the governor, I've always mentioned it to the governor, it is not those people who helped you to win an election that will help you to deliver.
Not to worry,
credible people.
We have some other that really expatiate on these key points we've been given about law enforcers and of course political elite, the impact they're having on rights activists. Comrade Reverend David Ogolo, it's so wonderful to hear you really talk on this particular issue. Viewers, not to worry, next week we'll still be here at about 5:30 to unravel to you what we have in store for you on this platform. Reverend, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. We'll do it again next week, Monday. God willing. Bye for now.